Fellow Ghanaians, good evening and thank you very much for joining us tonight on Upfront on the Joy News channel. It's always a pleasure to come your way with Upfront every Wednesday and Thursday evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And today our focus is on COVID-19 and job losses. Because since the outbreak of COVID-19, the global economy has been hardly hit. The African economy and particularly the Ghanaian economy have also been hit. In fact, forcing government to review Ghana's projected GDP growth downward to 0.9%. Jobs have been lost as businesses collapse. Now, according to the Ghana Statistical Service survey, it indicates that about 115,000 businesses have either closed down permanently or temporarily. Sales of businesses, we're told, have reduced by 25% between March 2019 and March 2020, and 36% between April 2019 and April 2020. According to the Ghana Statistical Service, the accommodation and food subsector experienced the highest dip of 57%. And out of the 45,000 workers who lost their jobs during the partial lockdown, most of them were within the accommodation and food subsector. That's not all. According to that same survey, we're told that 770,124 workers have had their salaries reduced. You know, when COVID-19 started, the president, in fact, on the 27th of March, talked about how the government was in this together with Ghanaians. And so was going to ensure that government would put up the best of plans to ensure that they are able to minimize the impact of COVID-19 on businesses and households. In fact, he directed the finance minister to go to Parliament with a coronavirus alleviation program, which, among other things, promised 600 million Ghana cedis for micro, small, and medium enterprises, eventually increasing to 1 billion. The president also talked about, the need to assist households, and so there was a talk of free water for 3 months and free electricity for 3 months for lifeline consumers, which has been extended now, and also a 50% reduction for those who are not lifeline consumers. These and other measures, according to the president, was supposed to help ameliorate the problems that businesses were likely to face as a result of COVID-19. Almost 5 months after the announcement, the Ghana Statistical Service is telling us that about 770,000 people have had to, take reduced salaries. 45,000 people have lost their jobs. And government is currently promising an insurance package for those who have lost their jobs as a result of COVID-19. And also talking about the COVID Alleviation and Revitalization Enterprise Support Program, which is supposed to help businesses. In fact, in the supplementary budget, the finance minister says some 2 billion would be allocated to businesses. But today, we want to find out a few things. With the Ghana Statistical Service survey talking about the accommodation and food sector being hardly hit, we want to do something very unique. We want to find out how the hotels have been coping. What has been the challenge with them since COVID-19 broke out in Ghana? How have they been coping? Now, have they received any assistance from government? I do know they've been engaging government, but what has been the level of that engagement? And to help us, analyze this and do so effectively, we've been joined by Dr. Edward Akanyamika Jr., who is the president of the Ghana Hotels Association. He's joining us via Zoom. Dr. Akanyamika, thank you very much for joining us. I believe you're doing very well, even though business is quite bad around this time.
Winston, it is well. I'm great, and I trust you're doing great too.
I am doing very great. But before we even get into how you're coping and all of that, so the president, on the 27th of March, outlined some measures that he was going to be using in making sure that, all the challenges that you're likely to face as businesses, government was going to help you minimize those challenges. Let's go and watch, and listen to what the president said. We will come back, and then I'll find out from you how you've been coping and what your own figures are, whether they're different from the Ghana Statistical Service or whether they're the same. Let's watch President Akufo-Addo as he announced some of measures that he had put in place to ameliorate the plight of those who are going to be hit by COVID-19.
Tonight, will be subject to constant review. Fellow Ghanaians, we are in this together, and the government will stand by you. We are aware that there will be discomfort and difficulties for all of us over the next couple of weeks. As a responsive government, we will continue to implement bold measures to mitigate the impact of the coronavirus on businesses and households and ensure that job losses are minimized. The Minister for Finance has been directed by me to prepare for approval by Parliament a coronavirus alleviation program to address the disruption in economic activities, the hardship of our people, and to rescue and revitalize our industries. He will then immediately make available a minimum of 1 billion cedis to households and businesses, particularly small and medium-scale enterprises. The commercial banks are, in addition, responding to the Bank of Ghana's 1.5% decrease in the policy rate and 2% in reserve requirement with a 3 billion cedi facility to support industry, especially in the pharmaceutical, hospitality, service and manufacturing sectors. We're providing additional relief, such as extension of the tax filing date from April to June, a 2% reduction of interest rates by banks, effective 1st April 2020, the granting by the banks of a 6-month moratorium of principal repayments to entities in the airline and hospitality industries, i.e. hotels, restaurants, car rentals, food vendors, taxis, and Uber operators. All other sector credit exposures will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Mobile money users can send up to 100 cedis for free, and 100% to 300% increase in the daily transaction limits for mobile money transactions. Let me also reiterate that the ban on public gatherings, religious or social, is still in force. Anyone, irrespective of status, religion, or ethnicity, who is found to be flouting them will be dealt with fully in accordance with law. The security services have been clothed with the necessary power to enforce these measures, and I assure you, they will do so responsibly, but without fear or favor.
Right, so that's President Akufo-Addo talking about plans that have been put in place by his government, talking about the commercial banks making available some 3 billion Ghana cedis to support industries, particularly those within the pharmaceutical sector and hospitality sector. The president goes ahead to say for those within the hospitality sector, he's talking about those within the hotels, those who own hotels, those who own food joints and restaurants. However, that notwithstanding, the Ghana Statistical Service says the worst hit subsector is the accommodation and food subsectors. Dr. Edward Akanyamike, thank you once again for joining us. So let's look at how you've been managing. And I know that you own a facility. I'd like to start off with you before we expand the conversation to include your members. How have you been coping, ever since COVID-19, ever since the outbreak of COVID-19 and the challenges associated with the economy and lockdown?
Well, thank you once again, Winston. Let me start by saying that fortunately or unfortunately, I own a very small facility, just 10 rooms. So the impact has not been that grave on my operations, but the inflows has been reduced by, I might say, about 50% in terms of the inflows. So I haven't laid off any of my workers, but what I have done in line with the disease control is to change their roster so they come in turns 4 days each. That way we are reducing the risk of the staff contracting the disease. So basically, at that small level, it's not been a major challenge. But
Okay,
you are
but
aware that I speak for the industry, so the focus is more on the bigger picture than myself.
exactly, we'll get to the industry bit, but I'd like us to, look at your own peculiar case. So, have you
Okay.
reduced salaries of your employees?
Fortunately, no, I haven't, and that's because I'm tapping into some reserves that I'm managed to put aside. I'm tapping into some reserves, and I'm just praying that I'll be able to tap further in that reserve, because very soon that reserve to also dwindle, and it might be difficult to pay them. But for now, I've managed to pay their SNATs, their taxes, their Tier 2 contributions, and everything that I need to do for them. I've been doing that. So it's been okay so far on that side.
And how many employees do you have?
8.
8 employees. Okay.
Yes.
You talked about inflows reducing by 50%, just so we'll better appreciate what the challenges are. Prior to COVID-19, how much on the average were you making? And after COVID-19, if you could tell us how much you're making now.
Okay, so you're talking about in the range of 25 to say 35 to 40,000. And then now you're talking about 13, 15,000 sometimes. Of course, during the lockdown, we closed, so that was 0. But averagely around 12, 15, yeah, in that range.
So let's look at your members, and you represent a large group. What has been the impact on your members?
Winston, you see, the industry survives on movement of people. So anything that stops people from moving affects the industry. So immediately the borders were closed with the social distancing, and then the closure of restaurants and conferences and events. That automatically stopped the business. Now, a lot of our members depend on international visits or visitors. So once the international borders were closed, they were not having those clients. And then within the country too, because of the conferences that were cancelled, because of the events that were cancelled and all that. So all these customers were also lost. And then the fear of the disease itself, made people stay away from our facilities. So in that regard, some of the hotels shut down completely because patronage had dropped to below 10%. And our business must operate at a certain level before you can break even. So below 10%, it wasn't advisable economically to even operate. So they had to shut down.
Okay.
Some were able to brave the situation and manage with that level of patronage because, like I mentioned earlier, they were tapping into some reserves. And then some also had to do partial operation by closing some of the wings of their facilities. So, and then that also meant that then they reduced the number of their staff.
So talking about reduction in the number of staff, so the Ghana Statistical Service has come out with its number. It says that in total, 45,000 workers have lost their jobs, and you're looking at 15,000 businesses that are either closed permanently or temporarily, with 770,000 workers having to receive pay cuts. For you as an association, what are your figures? I mean, in your normal conversation with your members, what do they tell you? Or what have you done any analysis that tells you, for instance, we've laid off this number of workers?
Yes, Winston, unfortunately, we don't have that luxury of being able to collect raw data like the Statistical Service did, but we did some projections. You see, the hotel subsector has various categories. We have the budget hotels to the 5-star hotels. And we usually lump the budget and 1-star hotel together as our small operators. Then the 2 and 3 stars as our medium operators, and then 4 and 5-star as our large operators. Now, let me speak for all hotels, because we have over 4,000 registered hotels in Ghana. Now, we looked at the budget and 1-star category, which forms about 70% of those 4,000. Averagely, and this is very conservative, averagely they employ about 10 workers. Some could be more, some could be less, but averagely 10 workers. So that's for the budget and 1-star. When you move to a 2 and 3-star category, you are talking averagely of about 50 workers per hotel, and they form 20% of the over 4,000 hotels in Ghana. And then we have the 4 and 5-star, which form just about 5%. And they employ on the average, and again, it's very conservative, on the average about 100 workers. So when we put all these things together, and then we then assume that, and indeed that's the case, about 60% of these hotels had to either close down completely or some partial close down. When you do the mathematics there, that means that we had about 48,000 layoffs between March.
48,000 layoffs.
Yes, by that projection. By that projection, we had about 48,000. That's 60% of the staff that we're working with in that period.
Let me just get a clarification. Were they laid off, or maybe told to take pay cuts?
Okay, that's where we need to also define some of these things well. Now, you see, we have had permanent layoffs and then temporary layoffs. Okay, and even the temporary layoffs, there's no guarantee now. The way things are going, there's no guarantee. So we decided to put the temporary layoffs together with the permanent layoffs. And that is the 48,000 I'm talking about.
And the 48,000 actually exceeds the 45,000, as put out by the Ghana Statistical Service.
Well, they did a sampling, so they did a sampling. I don't think they visited all businesses in Ghana. They did something. And even among the hotels, I don't know how many hotels they visited. And even the figures I've given to you, like I said, very conservative, because you could have a 5-star hotels with over 250 staff. You could have a budget hotel with over 50 staff, okay? So we decided to use an average across board. So the figures I'm even mentioning could be more than, the actual figures could be more than what I'm mentioning now. And that's the seriousness of the situation.
So that means that for you as a Ghana Hotels Association, you've been hardly hit by this because of, the lack of movement and everything and the fear of the virus.
Winston, I'm sure you've read the media budget.
Yes, I have.
Very good. If you look at what the finance minister, when he was talking about the businesses that have been hit by the pandemic, guess the industry he mentioned first? Hotels and the hospitality, and that tells you something. Because our job, our business, our industry simply depends on movement. Stop movement and you kill the industry, period. Wow. Okay, and everything about COVID-19, right from middle of March to now, has been about restricting movements, about stopping people from moving, about discouraging movement. If you don't have anything to do, stay at home. If you don't have anything to do, stay at home. The virus is dangerous.
So I do know that there's been some support to the MSME, that's the micro, small, and medium enterprises. Now, has there been any direct support to the hotels and hotel owners?
Listen, I wish I could say so. I really wish I could say so. But for now, no. But let me put it in perspective, because you played back the president's address.
Yes.
So, yeah. And the electricity, yes, we enjoyed it. And a lot of the hotels were very happy about it. The 50% discount on electricity. It came at the right time. We're very grateful to the government. Where we had an issue was the water.
Okay.
The water, the Ghana Water Company, for whatever reason, and their sector ministry decided to interpret the president's free water for all as free water for only domestic users. So we, the businesses, and you see, unfortunately, the businesses have decided to live with it and left the whole fight for only hotels association or hotels to give the impression that the hotels are fighting for free water. The president said free water for all Ghanaians. And even when the finance minister was reading the mid-year budget, he mentioned that the current government had given free water for 3 months for domestic and commercial users. As we speak, and that was for April, May, June. They've extended for July, August, September. As we speak, listen, they have decided to continue to charge, and nobody has said anything about it. Well, we'll come to that later.
Yes, but I mean, let's stay with that. Yes, let's stay with that. Let's stay with that because if that is the problem that you have you contacted government? Have you held discussions with government? Have you held discussions with the Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation? Have you spoken to the Ghana Water Company Limited to have these matters clarified? Because my checks also, so the president talked about government going to come up with modalities, and my checks with the Ghana Water Company Limited said, well, it was only for domestic users.
Well, talking about what we've done about it, you know, the Ghana Tourism Authority is our primary regulatory.
Yes.
But yes, so we have discussed it with them. They are aware of it. We've discussed it with the minister. We brought it to attention of the minister. And you know, the interesting aspect of it is that we had the opportunity to meet the president at the Jubilee House.
And what did he tell you?
Yes, we raised it. And to be frank with you, the president was surprised that we were being charged for water when he had said it was free. So he actually instructed our sector minister to work on it.
As in Barbara Otienje?
I'm talking about Barbara Otienje.
Otienje, sorry. And did she work on it? What did she tell you? What was her response after that directive from the president?
Well, after that directive, we were hoping that the Ghana Water Company will reverse the decision. But that did not happen. We engaged the Ghana Water Company, like you rightly were suggesting. We engaged them. They said that their sector ministry had instructed them to charge only the commercial, so charge the commercial users. Now, you see, the interesting thing about some of these challenges is that we have a sector ministry.
Yes.
So we cannot cross our sector ministry. We are dealing with the water and sanitation ministry. That has been the protocol. So we raised it with the sector ministry. Unfortunately, that has not happened. But last week, we were called for a meeting. Unfortunately, the minister herself could not make it because she called for the meeting, but she could not make it. But the GTA chief executive was there. And what he said was that the issue had been sent to cabinet.
Okay.
And cabinet was going to deal with it. So we are hoping that cabinet will really deal with it.
Okay. I mean, I'm just curious, but maybe you might have raised this question. I mean, if there's an issue that, you know, the president was surprised about, isn't that an indication that in coming out with those directives, the president was very clear in his mind, and his directive to the minister would have been very clear to Ghana Water Company Limited? What else would Parliament, would Cabinet be doing in all of this if there was a clarity of thought? Did you raise these concerns?
Well, listen, as our Vice President has always said, you and I were not there. So I cannot tell the specific instruction that was given to the minister. But at least what we saw at that meeting with the president was that he looked in the direction of the minister and said, follow up with this. So our conclusion was that that was going to be solved within a couple of days or latest in the week. But it didn't happen. We've been talking about it. But like I said, last week, the GTA chief executive told us that the issue, in fact, they said they had written to Ghana Water Company, that's the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture. They had written to Ghana Water Company. And Ghana Water Company said that they were acting on directives from the ministry or from cabinet. So if they have an issue, they should go back to cabinet for cabinet to direct them. So we are hoping that cabinet will direct them so that those monies we paid from April, May, June to now will be taken off. Because in times like
you want those monies refunded to you? Is that what you want?
Of course, listen. Why not? We are struggling. The hotels are struggling. See, and that is why, listen, right from the beginning of this pandemic, we suggested that instead of this, or in addition to the money that has been given to NBSSI, which they are struggling to disburse, they are really struggling to disburse.
Well, they say they are currently disbursing to the micro. Once they're done with the micro, they'll get to.
We were told that it will take 2 weeks from application to disbursement. It's 2 months now.
Yes.
More than 2 months. And it's 5 months into the pandemic. So when you ask the question about how we are coping, listen.
You're making a point. You're making a point about. I mean, I'd want you to conclude that point about an earlier suggestion that, you know, with that money given to NBSSI, what should have been done to you, the hoteliers? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, we were saying that. You see, certain measures cut across, and they touch on every business. For instance, if you ask us, okay, to suspend, say, payment of our regulatory fees, that the fees we pay to Environmental Protection Agency, the fees we pay to Food and Drugs Authority, the fees we pay to the Metropolitan Municipal and District Assemblies. When you ask them to suspend all this, every registered hotel will feel the impact, the positive impact of it. Okay, because then that money that we have to look for to go and pay these things, we wouldn't have to. When you ask us to suspend, say, payment of SNIT for a period, the benefit will be very clear to everybody. When you didn't reduce tax for us, it will benefit everybody. But when you give 600 million to one organization to disburse to over 400,000 businesses, you're asking for trouble. And that's the trouble we find ourselves in now. So this excuse of we are dealing with the micro first and blah, 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 we say that was not the understanding we're giving. And in any case, that money was supposed to be a distress relief. And you see, right from the beginning, I kept on stressing that this thing is not stimulus package. When it comes to the hotel, you cannot talk about stimulus package in situations like this. It's a distress relief package. We need it to at least cushion our staff. We need it to take care of the rent. And listen, you'll be surprised to know that some hotels rent the facilities they work in. Okay, it's not every hotel that is owned. The physical facility is owned by the operator. Some of them rent it. So when rent is due, the landlord is on you. And then this issue about, the hotel business, we always buy things on credit.
Sure.
Okay. Yes, you buy things on credit. So the vendors, the suppliers, they have supplied already. And remember that we just come out of a successful year of return. So the investments were put in place. We invested, bracing ourselves for a solid 2020, and this thing happened. So the vendors are chasing them, the suppliers are chasing them. Some went for loans to construct or make changes to their facilities. The banks are chasing them.
Yes, but talking about the banks and all of that, so I mean, that particular clip that we played, the president talked about a moratorium on, a 6-month moratorium on principal payments. So you're not going to be paying the principal, you're supposed to be paying the interest. There was a 2% reduction in interest rates also. The bank had done that. And there was also a $3 billion facility made available by commercial banks, which you could access. And didn't you take advantage of all of those?
Listen, you see, when you look at some of these policy directions, let me put it that way, or programs on paper, or when it is spoken, this sounds so good. This sounds very promising. But the challenge is the implementation.
Okay.
When it comes to implementation, then there's a problem.
Were there problems with implementation when it comes to these policies that were outlined by the government? What were the implementation challenges?
Of course. A typical one is the NBSSI one, but let me put that one aside. Now, when it comes to the 3 billion, you see, the 3 billion, I remember, it was not like government had put 3 billion down to say that go for it, apply for it. And let me quickly chip in that 3 billion money came in. The president mentioned it when we went to meet him at the Jubilee House. And that was in response to the fact that the 600 million to the MBSSI for disbursement was for facilities with less than 99 staff. So our concern was, what about those with facility with staff of 99 and more? And that's where he mentioned the 3 billion. Now, the 3 billion was more like a syndicate support from the commercial banks, the Bank of Ghana, and the Ministry of Finance.
Exactly.
In other words, the Bank of Ghana and the finance had to facilitate this with the commercial banks. But the point is that when you go to the commercial banks, they are like, what are you talking about? What is the incentive for for the bank? You know, so these things have now.
No, hold on 1 minute. I just want a clarification here. Are you saying that you went to the commercial banks and they told you, they asked you, what are you talking about? In effect, they didn't know about this particular program?
No, not necessarily that literally. But what I'm saying that our members, okay, who have contracted loans, have tried to use some of these statements mentioned by the president and the finance minister to try and get themselves out of their loan situations. And the response has not been encouraging.
It is a response I'm interested in.
They are not aware of what the government said, but
what were the responses?
That arrangement with the commercial banks to ensure that what the president has said is put into action. There's some gap there, there's some disconnect there, and it is not happening. And which is why I was so surprised when I heard the finance minister say that the 3 billion arrangement had actually jumped to 7 billion. And we're like, so who has received those those goodies? And we told the GTA and the chief director of MOTAC, that's the Ministry of Tourism and Arts and Culture, what we made them last week. And now they are saying that, oh, okay, so there's been some challenges getting the banks on board. There are some issues. Well, I'm not a finance person, so I can't explain it very well. But I see there's some issue to do with moratorium on whether the principal or the interest.
Yeah, but the president was clear. It was the principal. The 6-month moratorium was on the principal. Okay. So there's no confusion there. He makes it very clear.
But they are also making the point that if you limit it to only the principal, then it doesn't make economic sense. I cannot explain it, but that's the point they raise. But what I'm trying to say is that, you see, if these things are going on, at least we should have some of the hotels coming out to share their good experiences. That yes, my situation has been improved because of X, Y, Z. Winston, as we speak, we don't have anybody. Is there anybody listening to me, a hotel operator, to come out and say that my loan has gone so well, I've been giving the moratorium, whether on the principal or whatever, and then I've enjoyed some benefit from this 7 billion that the finance minister spoke about.
We'll come back and look at the other measures that were put in place and what your expectations are, particularly of the 2 billion, the cap bus that is also being put in place, and the COVID-19 alleviation and revitalization enterprise support program that the finance minister also talked about. This is Upfront on JoyNews channel. I'm Winston Amwa. We'll be right back after this break. All right, so welcome back from that short break, and thank you very much for staying with us. This is Upfront on the JoyNews channel. I'm Winston Amma, and today we are looking at COVID-19 and job losses as well as closures, because I've been telling you about how some 115,000 businesses, according to the Ghana Statistical Service, have closed down permanently or temporarily as a result of COVID-19, particularly within the period where there was a partial lockdown. And our guest is Dr. Edward Akanyamike, who is the president of the Ghana Hotels Association. So you're talking about how you've not been able to benefit from some of these policies that were put out. But there's also the, the extension of the filing of tax returns, which was supposed, from April, May, June, you're not supposed to file. And so that 3 months period was supposed to make way for you to do a few other things. And there's been a reduction in interest rates by 2%. But let's look at the non-filing of tax returns within that period. Did they in any way help you? Did they in any way create a bit of space for you?
Certainly, because the filing of the returns comes with the payment of some taxes.
Yeah.
So that extension, of course, gave room for some maneuvering of funds. So that was well received, and we're grateful for that.
Good. You talked about how, some of your friends have actually rented facilities and converted them into hotels, and how some have had to close down. For those members who have had to close down, for those members who rented facilities and turned them into hotels, when you meet them, how do they tell you they are coping? What is their current economic situation?
Well, listen, it will be difficult to say exactly how people cope when it comes to financial matters. But the evidence is always there for you as an individual to judge yourself. Now, if you have a facility which used to attract patronage, at least you are paying your staff. At least you're also using some of the money to also take care of yourself. And that facility stops operation. Listen, you see, sometimes the owners, the hotel operators, the owners and the general managers are even more concerned about the plight of their workers in situations like this. They're more concerned about the plight of their workers, because these are people you've worked with them for years. A lot of them have been in the business for several years. They depend solely on the job, and you are having to look at them and tell them that for now, go home. I have some operators who receive not less than 100 calls a day from their workers. Yes. My family needs this, the children are sick, this, that, a lot of such requests. And that is simply because you are a general manager or you are an owner. So in this situation, it's not even about the owner alone. It's not even about just the operator. But the hundreds, the tens, the 50s, whose livelihood depends on the facility. And that is what gives them sleepless nights. There's this operator, you know very, very well, but I don't have to mention the name here. All the big hotels, 3-star, of over 170 rooms. No business. No business at all because of the international borders that have been closed.
Okay.
The only respite was when the quarantine accommodation came. And then they were able to get some 2 weeks breather to sort out a few things. Otherwise, you see, the staffing of hotels has to do with the number of rooms. Because the number of rooms relates about 1.5 to the number of staff.
Okay.
So if you see any hotel, just use the number of rooms to calculate the number of staff, and you see the dependency.
Exactly, but there's also the situation where now, I mean, you've talked about the challenges with movement, particularly around the partial lockdown period. But now you have a situation where the lockdown has been lifted. You have a situation where life is returning to normalcy. So doesn't that in itself present you with a renewed opportunity to make it now?
You see, with the reality of the situation is that and I'm sure you may have cited it in a few reports or articles, when an industry like the hotel suffers situations like this, the return to normalcy drags on for some time. It really, really drags on. And it takes some amount of intervention. It takes some amount of repositioning. It takes some amount of getting your patrons and the new ones as well to come back on board. And in this particular instance, we are talking about a virus. And I talked about the fear about the virus itself. So, yes, the restrictions have been eased. But guess what? These restrictions relate to numbers. Initially, the conference was pegged at 100. The recent one the president announced, we're not even sure whether the hotels were part of it. I mean, listening to 200, but I'm sure a lot of them have assumed that they are part of it. Okay. You are talking about facilities which could host over 500, over 1,000 participants in an event, and then restricting them to 100. So the recovery, yes, it will come, and it is coming. But the pace of that recovery, some have even pegged it at 2 years, a year, and that is even when the cure for the disease is known, or we were able to have a vaccine for it. That will help. But for now, that there's no vaccine, there's no cure. It means that fear of the virus will still be there. That fear of going out to a hotel will still be there. And that fear of now the online programs, Zoom meetings, and all those things, it's going to capture quite a number of these clients. So yes, the recovery will really come, but it's going to take place slowly. And we are anticipating that it will take us about 2 years to really come back to normalcy.
That's a long time. You've talked about interventions that are needed. You say there's some interventions that, when put in place, are very likely to help you recover. What are those interventions?
Well, Winston, you see, with the hotel sector, again, let me make reference to the movement of people. So it has to start with a focus on how to manage the movement of people. And here we are not saying that because of our businesses, government should open the floodgates for people to just move around and create more problems for us health-wise. No, that's not what they're saying. We are looking at a situation where these things can be managed, that is being done, or even better. For now, we are looking at even promotion of domestic tourism. Domestic tourism, because in the past, the focus has been on international tourism. People come from other countries into the system. Is there a way we can promote domestic tourism? At one point, the president started something like that, but I think it waned now a bit with the 6th March independence celebration moving from region to region. Okay, and I think at Tamale he spoke about domestic tourism. If we can encourage that, if we can push that, that at least will give us some respite in terms of people moving and having access to the hotels. Secondly, it's about the funding or the resources. You see, when you read about the unemployment insurance that the government is pushing for, good idea. However, our point is that, you see, in emergency situations like this, some of these measures and policies, for me, they sound a bit long-term. They sound a bit long-term. So if
you think the insurance scheme is a long-term? I mean, monies have been allocated to it. I mean, in the mid-year, in a supplementary budget, that's like short-term. It's going to be done.
Listen, how much was given to that?
I think that's. I know the cap bus is 2 billion. That should be.
The 2 billion for the guaranteed.
That should be about 100, and that's more than 100. That's about 50 million. I'll check it quickly for you.
Okay, but you see, where you have identifiable groups, where you have identifiable sectors like a hotel industry, and you are very clear in your mind that this is an industry that has been hit by this pandemic, locating them and giving them that direct support. Because all we're saying is that we are not talking about government paying for the full salaries of our staff. We're talking about government supporting us so that if we talk about, say, 50% reduction in salaries for staff, that support comes in at least to keep these workers on the payroll. Keeping on the payroll means that you are providing them with some livelihood. But now, we are going to go through the process of go and apply, assess you, do this, when we can easily channel some of these things through the established industries that we have in the system. Okay, now let me give you another example. When the NBSSI issue came up, guess what happened? Instead of rewarding those who have been paying their taxes, they are registered, they are formal, and do all these things in terms of the tax identification numbers, the NBSSI decided to get people to now go and get their tax identification numbers. What are we saying to those who are obedient with regards to their payment of taxes? See, so sometimes some of these arrangements must be done in a way that rewards those who have been supporting the economy. And you cannot rule out the hotel industry or the hospitality industry when you talk about the sector that have really supported the economy. And so when you start talking about this insurance, up to now, I don't know if you've seen it, but we were promised that the details of it will come out. Was it last week? It's not out yet. I'm yet to see it. But when it comes, I'm sure the social commentators and the industry players are going to look at it and comment about it. And my fear is, when is this thing going to start effectively? NBSSI said 2 weeks from application, you will receive it. How long is this one going to take? Is it going to be another 6 months? For somebody who has been unemployed right from March to now, to wait for another 3, 4, 5 months to receive that unemployment insurance package. Wasting. All I'm saying is that the way some of these packages, some of these interventions have played out so far, frankly, some of us have become a bit skeptical in the measures that the finance minister mentioned in his mid-year budget.
Why are you skeptical?
Listen, I just explained that to you. The way these things have been implemented.
Some people are receiving monies. The micro sector, they're receiving monies as a result of the 600 million, which is now increased to 1 billion. They're receiving money. The disbursement is started.
If you run a business and you are at the verge of collapsing and you expect some intervention, and it takes you not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 months still waiting for that intervention, what happens to those who depend on the business? And let me even paint a clear picture of this dependency on the businesses. I'm not even talking about direct staff alone, because when you set up a hotel, it has that rippling effect on businesses. So you are talking about the plumbers who depend on the hotels, you are talking about the gardeners who depend on the hotels, the electricians, the masons, the painters, and all of them.
Okay, let me just chip this in because we're looking at the figure. Yes, I have seen the media budget review. It doesn't put a figure to it. It talks about establishing it. It doesn't put a figure to it. So just by way of so that our viewers would be informed, it talks about establishing this, but doesn't put a figure to it. And the modalities we're told are being worked out, and they're going to be established. They're going to be completed shortly. So that will be done. So in the meantime, you don't trust government. Finally, we know that.
I wouldn't say I don't trust government.
Hold on, you don't. You're skeptical.
With the implementation.
Yes, you're skeptical about the implementation when it comes to all the measures that have been put in place. One of the things we know is that abnormal times call for innovations.
Yeah.
What steps are you taking to innovate at this time?
Okay. You see, the challenge with the hotel industry is that there's limited diversification within the sector itself. Okay, you have a building which gives accommodation to people, unless of course you want to change that business completely into something else. Okay. So apart from the restaurants portion of it, apart from the laundry portion of which you could use for business, because you could easily turn your laundry into commercial laundry where people bring stuff, you know. Apart from that, these rooms, 200 rooms, 100, 150 rooms, listen, what do you do with them?
What do you do with them? We'll continue having this conversation. Edward Akanyamike, thank you very much for joining us this evening on our front. We're very grateful to you for making time to join us. Edward Akanyamike is the president of the Ghana Hotels Association, talking about how they have been impacted by COVID-19. He says that about 48,000 workers have lost their jobs as a result of COVID-19. And, you know, contrary to many of the commentary out there, all the plans that have been outlined, even when it comes to the 3 billion facility that they say that, you know, the commercial banks are willing to give to businesses, there's been a challenge when it comes to their members. They've gone in there, they've not been able to access those loans. He says they didn't enjoy the free water. They enjoyed free electricity, 50% reduction. They didn't enjoy the free water. Something they would expect that government works on so they could enjoy. But they are skeptical about all the policies that have been put in place by government, because when it comes to implementation, they seem to have a challenge about it. That'll be all from us this evening. I am Winston Amor on behalf of the team. Thank you very much for joining us. Up next is the Joy News Prime. Keep watching Joy News channel.